Hello, 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 strangers, hello, hello out there, hello, hello, hello. Are you there? Hello? It's been so long. I've been wondering where you were. I've been looking in this strange, weird box, and now you're there. You have come alive in front of me, It is good to see you today. My name is John O'Keefe, Mr. O to Many. We are now prepared to read chapters 17 through 19 or 18 to 19 today. I believe it'll take us approximately half an hour. It has been a long time since we have been together, and do you know why it's so wonderful that we are here? Because I've been on an adventure. I've been on an adventure, not just away from my home. Adventures can happen within here too. We've been having some work on our house done. Got me? And you've obviously noticed this is my office right here, right? So the problem is the work that was being done was right next door, and it was filled with workers, people talking all the time, pounding, drilling, sawing, doing all those things. And then it just did not make for good reading time. So I'm glad to see you. I'm glad to be back with you. I'm glad to be here. Hi, how are you? I hope your adventures in these last couple weeks have been fantastic. I think I want to get comfortable in the chair right over here and spend a little time with my good old friends, the reading crew. John O'Keefe recalled, because he had to go back and do a little bit more reading to find out what was going on. And one of the things that I found really, really interesting. Come closer to me. I missed you a whole bunch. Yeah, I missed you. Oh, there we go. Yeah, that's good. Okay. So, do you remember that we were on a journey? Gregor, Vicus, Solomon, the bats, the roaches. We have a little sweetheart sister. We have an adventure on their way, but they needed spinners, right? So spinners, spiders. So they get to Queen Weavox and all of the spiders, and they are wrapped in a funnily silky web, right? And then Gregor is like, that's really interesting. I thought it was going to be a little bit easier to take care of. And then Solomon says, well, we're actually their prisoners right now. Thought maybe the trade agreements and things like that were going to pan out for us in regards to getting their help. But unfortunately, the spiders have a different plan. And that is where we left. The last thing that we had heard, literally, was this. What's going on, said Gregor. Aren't they coming with us? No, Gregor, said Solomon. We are their prisoners. So, ladies and gentlemen, the exciting continuation of an awesome book, Gregor the Overlander, Book 1. Chapter 17, Prisoners, exclaimed Gregor. Are you at war with the spiders too? Oh, no, said Merrick. We're on peaceful terms with the spinners. We trade with them. We do not invade each other's lands, but it would be an exaggeration to call them our friends. I'll say, said Gregor. So did everybody know that they would lock us up except me? He had trouble keeping the irritation out of his voice. He was getting tired of finding out about things after the fact. I'm very sorry, Gregor, said Vicus. I have worked long to build bridges between ourselves and the spinners. I thought perhaps that they would be more agreeable, but I overestimated my influence with them. He looked weary and old. Gregor hadn't meant to make him feel worse than he already did. No, they really respect you. I mean, I think that they were going to eat me until I mentioned your name. Vicus brightened a little. Truly? Well, that is something. Where there is life, there is hope. That's so weird. That's what my grandma always says, said Gregor. He laughed, and somehow that broke the tension. Gigo, feast deeper, said Boots crankily. She tugged at her pants. Yes, Boots, fresh diaper, said Gregor. She hadn't been changed for ages. He dug through the pack Dulcet had given him and realized he was down to 2 diapers. Oh, he said, I'm almost out of catch cloths. Well, you could not be in a better place. The spinners weave all of our catch cloths, said Solomon. How come they're not sticky? Asked Gregor, touching his face. Spinners can make 6 different kinds of silk, some sticky, some soft as Boots' skin. They make our garments as well. Really? said Gregor. Do you think they'd let us have more catch cloths, even if we are prisoners? Oh my gosh. I guess it is silk, right? Be pretty smooth on the skin. Be nice. I doubt it's not. It's not the spider's goal to antagonize us, said Solomon, only to hold us until they can determine what to do. She called up to a guard, and in a few minutes, 24 diapers came down on a thread. The spider also sent down 3 woven baskets filled with clean water. Solomon began to work her way around the group, cleaning wounds and patching people up. Luxa, Henry, and Meredith paid close attention, as if she were teaching a class. Gregor realized the ability to heal battle wounds was probably important if you lived down here. Solomon began by cleaning the gash on Meredith's thigh and stitching it up with a needle and thread. Gregor winced on Meredith's behalf, but the guard's face was pale and set. 2 bats required stitches on torn wings, and though they made great effort to remain still while Solomon slid the needle in and out of their skin, the process was clearly agonizing. Oh man, connection. You ever had stitches? Oh, it's always fun to like go on adventure and stuff. It's always fun to kind of be out there doing good stuff. But the reality is that every so often you fall, you cut yourself, and you got to do something like go get stitches. And it is not a very wonderful experience. But that's the price you pay for taking chances, right? Once all obvious bleeding had been stopped, thank goodness, Solomon turned to Gregor. Let us attend to your face now. Gregor touched his cheek and found that welts had formed where the webs had ripped off. Solomon soaked a catchcloth in water and placed it on his face. Gregor had to grit his teeth to keep from screaming. I know it burns, said Solomon, but you must wash the glue from your skin or it will fester. Fester, said Gregor. That sounded awful. If you could stand to splash water upon your face, it would be a more painful but faster process, said Solomon. More painful but faster, or less painful and slower? What would you choose? What do you think Gregor is going to choose? I have a feeling he's going to probably go for the slower version, but I think under these circumstances, he's probably going to go for some of the pain. Let's see. Gregor took a deep breath and dunked his whole head into one of the baskets of water. Ah! He screamed silently. Oh, sorry. He screamed silently because he was under the water, and then came up gasping. After 5 or 6 dunks, the pain completely faded. Solomon nodded approvingly and gave him a small clay pot of ointment to dab on his face. While he gingerly applied the medicine, she cleaned and bound a series of smaller wounds and forced an uncooperative vicus to let her wrap his wrist. Pause. You know how right before that moment I gave just a little quick prediction about what I thought might be happening? I was wrong. Totally wrong. But the cool thing is that I was so aware of what was going on. I had made a decision to make a choice, come back, and after 5 or 6 slams into the water and his screaming, all of a sudden it was completely gone. So he ended up going for the faster, more painful version. Boy, I would have probably slowed that down, Miss Collins, and allowed us to really feel that burn. I wonder why you didn't allow us to hear that part. Finally, she turned to Temp and Tick. Crawlers, need you any assistance from me? Boots pointed out a bent antenna on one of the roaches. Temp, boo-boo, she said. No, princess, we heal ourselves, said Temp. Gregor was sorry Temp was injured, but on the plus side, he could now tell the roaches apart. Bandage, insisted Boots, and reached out to grab the crooked antenna. No, Boots, said Gregor, blocking her hand. No bandage on Temp. Bandage! Boots gave Gregor a scowl and pushed him away. Oh, great, thought Gregor. Here we go. In general, Boots was a very good-natured 2-year-old, but she was still 2, and every so often she would throw a tantrum that left the rest of the family exhausted. Usually it happened when she was tired and hungry. Gregor dug in the pack. Hadn't Dulcet said something about treats? He pulled out a cookie. Cookie, Boots? She reluctantly took the cookie and sat down to gnaw on it. Maybe he had headed off the worst. Hates us. The princess hates us? Asked Tick worriedly. Oh, no, said Gregor. She just gets like this sometimes. My mom calls it the terrible twos. Sometimes she throws a fit for no reason. Boots scowled at everyone and drummed her feet on the ground. Hates us. The princess hates us, murmured Tent sadly. Baby roaches probably didn't have tantrums. No, really, she still thinks you're great, promised Gregor. Just give her some space. He hoped the roaches wouldn't get so hurt by Boots' behavior that they'd want to go home. Not that anyone was going anywhere right now. Vicus gestured him over to where the others had gathered. He spoke in a whisper. Gregor, my wife fears the spinners may pass on our whereabouts to the rats. She advises that we escape with all speed. I'm good with that, said Gregor. But how? Boots came up behind him and gave his arm a pinch for no reason. No, Boots, he said. No pinching. More cookie, she said, tugging on him. No, not for pinchers. Cookies are not for pinchers, said Gregor firmly. Her lower lip began to tremble. She marched away from him, plunked herself down on the floor, and began to kick at the pack. Okay, sorry, what? What's the plan? Said Gregor, turning back to the group. Can we just cut our way through the web and run? No. Outside this funnel web are scores of spinners ready to repair a hole and attack with poison fang. If we flee upward, they will leap on us from the above, whispered Sullivan. What are they going to do? Sorry, whispered Sullivan. Leap from above. What's that leave? Said Gregor. Only one resort. Oh, what's that leave? Like, what's that leave? If we can't cut through, we can't climb up. Down? What's that leave? Said Gregor. Only one resort. We must damage the web so fully and so rapidly they cannot repair it, nor will it hold their weight, said Sullivan. She paused. Someone must perform the Coiler. Everyone looked at Luxa. So Gregor looked at her too. Her golden bat, which stood behind her, dipped its head down and touched her neck. We can do it, said Luxa softly. We do not insist, Luxa. The danger, particularly at the top, is very great. But in truth, you are our best hope, said Vicus unhappily. Henry put his arm around her shoulder. They can do it. I've seen them in training. They have both speed and accuracy. Luxa nodded resolutely. We can do it. Let's not wait. Gregor, ride you on Vicus's bat. Vicus with me. Henry and Marith take one crawler each, said Sullivan. We need a distraction to cover Luxa, said Marith. I could go through the side. Not with that leg, said Sullivan, her eyes flashing around. And no one goes through the side. It is certain death. The spinners are very sensitive to noise, said Vicus. It's too bad we have no horns. Gregor felt a pair of feet drumming angrily into his legs. He turned around and saw Boots on the floor kicking him. Cut it out, he snapped at her. Do you need a timeout? No timeout. You timeout. You timeout, cookie, sputtered Boots. She was about to blow any minute. You need a noise? Gregor said in frustration. I've got a noise for you. He picked Boots up and wrestled her into the backpack. No, Boots said, her voice rising in pitch and intensity. Everybody ready? Said Gregor, pulling a cookie from Dulcet's bag. The Underlanders weren't exactly sure what he was doing, but in seconds they were prepared to take off. Sullivan gave him a nod. We are ready. Gregor held up the cookie. Hey, Boots, said Gregor. Want a cookie? No cookie! No cookie! No, said Boots, way past the point of being pacified. Okay, said Gregor, then I'll eat it. And making sure she watched, he stuck the entire cookie in his mouth. Mine! Screamed Boots. Mine! It was an eardrum-piercing shriek that rattled his brain. Go, you Luxa! Cried Sullivan, and the girl took off on her bat. Now Gregor could understand why the Coiler was such a big deal. Luxa was rising up along the web, spinning and twisting at a dizzying rate. She held her sword out straight above her head. It was slicing the funnel to shreds. Only an extraordinary and flexible rider could have pulled off a move like that. Wow, said Gregor. He jumped on Vicus's big gray bat. Mine! Screeched Boots. Mine! Above him, he could see Luxa spinning and slicing. The other Underlanders were following her, cutting straight up the sides of the funnel web. Gregor brought up the rear with boots and her blinding screams. At the top of the funnel, the golden bat hung in space, performing an intricate, upside-down figure eight. Under the protection of Luxa's flashing sword, the Underlanders zipped out to freedom. Gregor was the only one still in the funnel when it happened. From above, a jet of silk shot down, encircling Luxa's sword arm and jerking her from the bat. The pair of striped legs reeled her in like a fish. The fangs of Queen Weevox opened to receive Luxa's neck. Is she going to be the one who dies? Is she going to be the one who dies? Oh my gosh. Chapter 18. No waiting. No waiting. Not now. Not now. Chapter 18. Gregor's mouth dropped open in horror. Luxa was seconds away from dying. She knew it too. She was writhing in terror, trying to bite through the silk rope at her wrists with her teeth, but it was too strong. He felt around desperately for a weapon. What did he have? Diapers? Cookies? Oh, why hadn't they given him a sword? He was a stupid warrior, wasn't he? His fingers dug in the leather bag and closed around the root beer can. Root beer. He yanked out the can, shaking it with all his might. Attack! Attack! He yelled. Just as the fangs were about to pierce Luxa's throat, he flew up and popped the soda can top. The stream of root beer shot out and smacked the spider queen right in the face. She dropped Luxa and began to claw at her 6 eyes. Luxa fell and was swept up by her bat. They joined the rest of the Underlanders who were fighting their way back to help. Blade wheel! Commanded Solivet, and the bats formed into a tight flying circle that had surrounded Gregor when he tried to escape from the stadium. The humans extended their swords straight out to the sides, and the formation began to move through the air like a buzzsaw. Boots' unearthly shrieks were causing many of the spiders to curl up in cowering balls. Whether it was the noise, the blade wheel, or fear of the root beer, Gregor didn't know. All he knew was that in a few minutes they were flying free and leaving the spiders far behind. Gregor unclenched his legs when he realized he was probably squeezing the life out of his bat. In one hand, he still held the half-empty can of root beer. He would have taken a drink if he'd thought he could swallow. Dude, the root beer came in handy. Plus. Boots' screams soon became whimpers. She put her head on his shoulder and completely crashed. She had been so upset. She still made little gasping sounds in her sleep. Gregor turned and placed a kiss on her curly little head. Luxa was stretched out on her bat's back, alive but wiped out. He saw Solivet and Vicus flying near her, speaking. She nodded but didn't sit up. They took the lead, and the bats sped even faster into the darkness. They flew a long time down the deserted passages. Gregor saw no signs of life, either animal or plant. Eventually, Solivet and Vicus waved them down, and the party landed in a vast cavern at the mouth of the tunnel. Everybody practically fell off the bats and just lay on the ground. Temp and Tick seemed almost comatose from fear. The bats staggered together and pressed into a tight, trembling knot. After a while, Gregor heard himself speak up. So, isn't it time I had a sword? There was a moment of silence. Then all the Underlanders burst out laughing. They went on and on. Gregor didn't really get the joke, but he laughed along with them, feeling the darkness drain out of his body. The laughter woke Boots, who rubbed her eyes and said cheerfully, "Where's Spider?" Somehow, that set everybody off again. Pleased with the response, Boots kept repeating, "Where's Spider? Where's Spider?" to appreciative laughter. "Spiders go bye-bye," said Gregor finally. "How about a cookie?" "Yes," said Boots, without a trace of anger over the earlier cookie incident. That was one great thing about her. Once she'd melted down and napped, she transformed back into her own sweet little self again. When they realized the princess did not, in fact, hate them, Temp and Tick rallied and ran around playing tag with her. Marith started to prepare food, but Solivet ordered him to lie down and prop up his leg. She and Vicus made dinner, while Henry and Marith played some kind of card game. Gregor went over to Luxa, who was sitting on a stone ledge. He sat beside her and could feel she was still terrified and shaking. How you doing? He asked. I'm fine, she said in a tight voice. That was really cool, that Coiler thing you did, he said. It was my first time in a real web, confessed Lexa. Mine too. Of course, in the Overland, spinners are small, and we don't call them our neighbors, said Gregor. Lexa grimaced. We do not mix much with spinners. Well, that's probably a good thing. I mean, who wants to mix with somebody who spends the whole time thinking about drinking you? Gregor said. Lexa looked shocked. You would not joke so hot had the queen trapped you. Hey, I was hanging there yelling for an hour before you guys decided to show up, said Gregor, and they really hated me. Lexa laughed. I could tell by what Queen Weavok said. She paused. Her next words were an effort. Thank you. For what? He said. Saving me with the... What's this weapon? She gestured to the root beer can. It's not a weapon. It's a root beer, Gregor said. He took a swig. Lexa looked alarmed. Should you drink it? She asked. Sure, try it, he said. Gregor offered her the can. She tentatively took a sip, and her eyes widened. It bubbles on the tongue, she said. Yeah, that's why it exploded. It shook up a lot of bubbles. It's safe now. It's just like water. Go ahead, you can finish it, he said, and she continued to take tiny, curious sips. Anyway, I owed you one, he said. You saved me from that rat the first night, so we're even. Lexa nodded, but seemed troubled. There is one other thing. I should not have struck you for trying to escape. I am sorry. And I'm sorry I called your home creepy. It's not like it's all creepy. Some of it's great, he said. Am I creepy to you? Asked Lexa. Oh, no. Creepy is like spiders and rats, and, things like that make chills run down your spine. You're just difficult, said Gregor, trying to be honest but not flat out rude. You, too, you are difficult to make do things, said Lexa. Gregor nodded, but he rolled his eyes when she wasn't looking. It was hard to imagine anyone more stubborn than Lexa. Vicus called them all to dine, and even the roaches felt comfortable enough to come join in the circle. I'm drinking Gregor's spinner's weapon, announced Lexa, holding up the root beer can. He had to explain about all the root beer all over again, and then everybody had to try a sip. When the can got to Boots, he said, well, that's the end of that, thinking she'd guzzled down the last few swallows. But instead, she poured out 2 tiny little puddles. Bee bugs, she said, pointing to the first puddle. Bats, she said, pointing to the second. Both sets of animals obligingly drank up the root beer. I believe Boots to be a natural ambassador, said Vicus, smiling. She treats all with an equality I myself aspire to. Come, let us eat. Everyone dug in like they'd never seen food before. When he'd slowed down enough to actually taste his food, Gregor asked the question that had been worrying him since they'd escaped from the spiders. Can we still go on the quest without the spinners? That is the question, said Vicus. That is the question we all must consider. Clearly, we cannot expect any spinners to join us willingly. We should have seized 2 when we had the chance, said Henry darkly. The prophecy says the spinners must assent, said Vicus. However, we know the rats have taken many spinners prisoners. Perhaps we can free a few and persuade them to accompany us. I have often had good results with spinners. But you will not be there, Vicus, Sullivan said quietly. What do you mean? Asked Gregor, feeling his mouth go dry. Vicus paused a moment, taking in the group. It is time for those of us not named by the prophecy to return home. Meredith, Sullivan, and I will fly after we rest. Gregor saw to his surprise mirrored on Luxa's and Henry's faces. Nothing in the prophecy forbids you to come, said Lexa. We are not meant to be here, and beyond that, we have a war to fight, said Sullivan. The thought of going anywhere without Vicus and Sullivan filled Gregor with panic. But you can't leave us. I mean, we don't even know where we're going, said Gregor. Do you guys know where we're going? He asked Lexa and Henry. They both shook their heads. See? You will manage. Henry and Lexa are well trained, and you show great resourcefulness, said Sullivan. She spoke simply and definitely. She was thinking of the war, the bigger picture, not of them. Gregor instinctively knew he could not change her mind. He turned to Vicus. You can't leave. We need you. We need someone who knows what they're doing. He looked at Lexa and Henry to see if they were insulted, but both were waiting anxiously for Vicus's reply. They know, thought Gregor. They act tough, but they know we can't get through this by ourselves. I do not plan to leave you stranded in the Deadland, said Vicus. Oh, great. We're in a place called the Deadland, said Gregor. So you're going to, what, draw us a map? No, I have arranged a guide for you, said Vicus. A guide? Asked Henry. A guide? Echoed Luxa. Vicus took a deep breath as if he was about to begin a long explanation, but then someone interrupted him. Well, I prefer to think of myself as a legend, but I suppose guide will do, said a deep, world-weary voice from the dark. Gregor shot his flashlight beam toward the sound. Leaning in the mouth of the tunnel was a rat with a diagonal scar across his face. It took just a moment for Gregor to recognize him as the rat Vicus had knocked into the river. Part 3, The Rat. Okay, wrap my brain around it. Vicus and Solibit and Merith are not a part of the prophecy. Therefore, they cannot go along. But we've got a rat who was sliced by Vicus. How are we going to be able to trust this guy, right? You know that's what's going to happen on this page. But we've still got 4 minutes left, so I'm not going to stop. Chapter 19, Part 3. Stay you, cried Vicus as Luxa, Henry, and Merith sprang up, sword in hand. Stay you! The rat regarded the 3 armed humans with amusement. Yes, stay you, or I shall be forced to move. And that always puts me in an ill humor, he said languidly. Luxa and Merith stopped uncertainly, but Henry ignored Vicus's command and lunged at the rat. Without moving another muscle, the rat flicked his tail. It cracked like a whip, knocking the sword from Henry's hand. The blade spun across the stone floor and slammed into the cavern wall. Henry gripped his wrist in pain. The hardest lesson for a soldier to learn is to obey orders he believes are wrong, said the rat, philosophically. Take care, lad, or you shall end up like me, stripped of any respectable rank and warming your shabby old hide at the fire of your enemies. The rat nodded at the old man. Vicus? Ripred, said Vicus with a smile. We have just commenced dining. Will you join us? I thought you'd never ask, said Ripred, pushing himself off the wall and slouching over to the fire. He squatted back on his haunches next to Solibit. My dear Solibit, how kind of you to fly out to greet me, and with a war on, too. I could scarcely have missed an opportunity to break bread with you, Ripred, said Solibit. Oh, come now. You know perfectly well you only tag along to wheedle information out of me, said Ripred, and to gloat over your victory at the flames. I destroyed you, said Solibit with glee. Your army turned tail and ran howling into the river. Army, snorted Ripred. Why, they were as much an army as I am a butterfly. I have stood a better chance fighting with crawlers. The rat looked at Temp and Tick, who were cowering against the wall inside. Present company excepted, of course. Boots frowned and toddled over to Ripred. She pointed her chubby finger at him. You mouse? Yes, I'm a mouse. Squeak, squeak. Now, shoo, shoo, back to your little bug friends, said Ripred, picking up a hunk of dried beef. He tore off a piece with his teeth and noticed Boots hadn't moved. He pulled his back lips to reveal a row of jagged teeth and gave her a sharp hiss. Oh, said Boots, scurrying to her roaches. Oh, don't do that, said Gregor. The rat turned his glowing eyes on him, and Gregor was shocked by what he saw there. The intelligence, the deadliness, and the most surprisingly, the pain. The rat was not like Fangor and Shed. He was much more complicated and much more dangerous. For the first time in the Underland, Gregor felt completely out of his league. If he fought this rat, he wouldn't stand a chance. He would lose. He would die. Ah, this must be our warrior, said Ripred softly. How very like your daddy you are. Don't scare my sister, said Gregor, trying to keep his voice steady. She's only a baby. From what I hear, she's got more guts than the lot of you combined, said Ripred. Of course, courage only counts when you can count. I'm presuming that the rest of you can count and will be screwing your courage to the sticking place any minute now. The rat glanced around at Luxa, Merith, and Henry, who were keeping their distance. The bats were extending and folding their wings, unsure of what to do. Well, come on then. Isn't anyone else hungry? I hate dying alone. It makes me feel so unloved. I did not prepare them, Ripred, said Vicus. Clearly, said the rat. Clearly my arrival is an unexpected pleasure. He went to work on his beef bone, making an awful scraping sound. Meet you, Ripred, the Gnar, said Vicus to the group. He should be joining the quest as your guide. There was a quick, breathy sound, as half of those gathered inhaled sharply. A long pause followed, in which no one exhaled. Gregor tried to make sense of what Vicus had announced so calmly. A rat? He was leaving them in the hands of a rat. Gregor wanted to object, but his throat had frozen. Finally, Luxa spoke up in a voice hoarse with hatred. No, he shall not. We do not travel with rats. The prophecy of Grey requires it, Luxa, said Sullivan. One Gnar besides. Beside could mean anything. Snarled Henry. Perhaps we leave the Gnar dead beside us. Perhaps you do, but having witnessed your last attack, I doubt it, said Ripred, starting on a wedge of cheese. We have killed 5 rats since midday, said Luxa. You mean the idiots that I handpicked for cowardice and ineptitude? Oh, yes, bravo, your highness. That was a masterly piece of combat, said Ripred, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Do not flatter yourself. You have yet to fight a rat. They themselves killed Fangor and Shed, said Merith bravely. Well, then, I stand corrected. Fangor and Shed were excellent fighters on the rare occasions they were sober, said Ripred. However, I expect that they were outnumbered and somewhat thrown by the arrival of our warrior. What say you, warrior? Do you refuse to go with me as well? Gregor looked into Ripred's mocking, tortured eyes. He wanted to refuse, but if he did, could he ever find his dad? As if following his thoughts, Vicus spoke up. You need Ripred to guide you to your father. These tunnels are unmapped by humans. You would never find your way without him. Still, he was a rat. That's what Gregor thinks and where we stop today. What say you? Readers, what say you? Does he venture to go? Does he turn and go away? Is that what somebody on a quest does? Or do they bring this rat beside them into the tunnels to find his father? It's an amazing big question that you're going to have to come back tomorrow to find out the answer to. I'm loving this. I feel like today there's been a little bit of a change, which I think is really cool. Like the change of Luxa thanking Gregor. Gregor was able to think on his feet. Didn't have a sword, but he certainly came up with a solution. Luxa would be dead otherwise. They've had a little bit of a shift, this idea that Vicus and Solivit now are leaving them. These are the trusted adults. So there's this young group of capable people, but uncertain of themselves. There's that doubt, kind of like if you were left like in a classroom by yourself for a little too long, like not like a long time, like maybe your teacher got called down to the office for like a 5-minute meeting, but like maybe 12 minutes into class and there's no teacher. You know what I mean? Like that's a little too long. And you start getting the what do we do now kind of feelings. And that is the part that I think is so intriguing. I'm still finding this idea of Boots to be amazing as well, because Boots is like this ambassador, this ability to like have this conversation. Ripred, this new character, has looked directly at this 2-year-old and said, she's got something, but unfortunately she's too young, right? And the adventure continues. It's good to be back with you. I'm really grateful to be back. I've missed you a lot, and I've missed reading with you. I haven't stopped reading, but I didn't read our book. You know what I'm saying? It's important to stick with the same book. So I was missing Gregor. I had almost kind of forgotten a little bit. And so it's nice to be back with you. And until we see each other again tomorrow, I want to tell you how grateful I am, how this is a safe place, how it's worth to continue pushing yourself, even if you're feeling a little bit tired around the edges. Welcome back to school, and breathe deep. Springtime is here. and it's going to get warmer and it's going to be sweeter. Don't leave me. Maybe just go sit outside. Go find your own book. Go read it to somebody else. Make them interested in it and pass it on, okay? I love you. Do your best. Now get out of here.